Joining me up here on stage are Associate Editor of Education Week, Steve Sawchuk, the Teacher Beat blog author, and Renee Pryor, our 2016 Leader to Learn from Tennessee.
Good morning. Well, I am so happy to be here with Renee Pryor. She is the Director of Evaluation Programs for Lincoln County Schools in Tennessee, which is a nice way of saying that she basically helps keep the district's evaluation support program for teachers on the rails. Not an easy job if you've been following the teacher evaluation discussion like I've been doing. And before we get to questions, I just want to say one thing about Renee. She is the most modest person I have ever met in my entire life. She is the most soft-spoken leader I have ever met, and this is Washington, where people generally want the spotlight as opposed to avoiding it. In fact, so I had to do a little bit of bait and switch to get Renee here today. When I first talked to her, I said, well, Renee, we're just going to do this little profile, and it'll be in the paper, it's not going to be blah, blah. And then like a week later I called back and said, well, the editors are really impressed and they'd love it if you would host a chat on edweek.org, but don't worry, you don't actually have to talk to anybody for it. It's just online. And
just type it.
Then a week later, I called back again and I said, well, we'd like to actually send a videographer to follow you around your school district for a day or two. And then finally I said, well, we'd like to put you on stage in front of Krieg lights and 300 people you've never met before. So here we are, extending your 15 minutes of fame, perhaps a little longer than you would like, but I'm so thrilled that you're here today. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about this morning actually comes from the chat that we did, and you were contacted by one of the participants who said, Renee, if we don't do teacher evaluation right, people are just going to leave their jobs. What is the most important thing that you've learned about doing teacher evaluation right?
Okay, so in evaluation, so many times teachers feel exposed instead of empowered. And along the way, this started about 5 years ago, but along the way, we learned that we have to support those teachers, not just through being evaluated. Obviously, that's not the support, it's the coaching after the evaluation, and it's the strategies we give them to support the learners in the classroom, the teaching for those learners. And we have to help those teachers when we give them programs, when we new assessments, for instance, this year in Tennessee. We have to support how do I not only assess students, test students, but then the platform there, it's online. So we have to make sure we give the teachers the supports they need to work with those students. So as you go in after an evaluation, then it's what can I do? What can I do to help that teacher do their job better in that classroom? And I think that's one of the things that we do well is the PD in our system, purchasing programs if they need it, technology if they need it, but then after we give those that technology to the teacher, then coming back in and saying, what is it that you need to be more successful using that technology or using that curriculum?
When we were talking about the work that you actually do with classroom teachers one-on-one, you said, I don't even really like the term evaluation so much. You like to have coaching conversations. Exactly. And one of the things that you learned over the period at which you've become proficient in doing this is that you told me I needed to do less telling and more asking. Can you tell our audience today what that means? Okay,
so in the classroom, we tell teachers, ask, don't tell. Because teaching is not telling, teaching is engaging the student in the learning. And we do that by asking questions. And the first year, whenever we started this, I found myself telling the score, telling the area of strength and the area of weakness, and then the conversation stopped. So I had to learn how do I keep the teacher engaged in this process so that they feel like at the end that they're growing and developing from the process. So I started asking questions like, what was the learning intention of that lesson? When you looked at your students, were they engaged? What were they engaged in? What was the conversation you were hearing as you circulated through the class? What were the outcomes of the assessment? Did it truly mirror the standard and the rigor of that standard? And so in doing so, I put the teacher in the leader's seat. I sat back and I listened to them, and by listening to them and showing through listening that I cared about them, then it supported improvement.
One of the other things that you do is you're not just somebody who comes and evaluates teacher, you actually advocate for them. And one of the ways that you do this is you've actually been one of the people that goes up to the state education department and says, you know, look, state education department, here are the things that are working with our evaluation program. Here are the things that aren't working. And clearly your teachers know that, you know, that the state has rules and that you're going to follow them,
That's
but they
exactly
also
right.
know that their feedback is going up to the people who make these decisions. Can you tell us a little bit about what that balance has been like?
I was at the State Department Tuesday with Dr. Terry Sue Fanning and our new director of school, Dr. Bill Heath, with an issue about portfolios and just some questions we had. And they invited us to come, and we took teachers with us. That was another thing we did well there. We took teachers with us. And in doing so, those teachers knew that they had a voice, and that the State Department was no longer the State Department. It was, you know, the person's name sitting across the table from them, listening to their fears and their worries. And listening to some of, you know, what did they need as a teacher in the classroom, and then feeling when they left that conversation that they were truly being heard, and that policy may not change, may not change right that instant, but that they were listening to them and their concerns. And so yes, they know that if they come to us, and it's anybody in our central office, I hate using I, it's about us. And they feel like our teachers in our district know that they can contact me, Dr. Terry Sue Fanning, the director of school, all the other, even the maintenance supervisor. I mean, we're open to working with teachers and for those students and for those parents. And I think that's just critical when we work with teachers, them knowing that we're there to help them.
I don't think I could possibly have rounded that up any better. So thank you again for coming and joining us today.
Thank you.
And being under the spotlights with me.
I feel a little exposed. I feel like a teacher right now in evaluation, by the way. But I do want to say that 8 seconds left. You know, I do feel like evaluation it's about celebrating, and that's one thing we forget about is we celebrate teachers every day. And in that classroom, I can go out and announce to the world what I'm seeing happening that's great in that classroom.
Getting a low score on a teacher evaluation can feel terribly personal. Renee Pryor knows that, and she has figured out how to take the sting out of that experience and develop individual professional development plans with teachers who are struggling. She takes the time to build teachers up and drive their success, even as she keeps her eyes squarely on student achievement in her Lincoln County, Tennessee district. Renee, congratulations on being recognized for your leadership, I'm going to say, in teacher coaching.
Coaching, thank you.
I like
Not
that.
evaluation.
You get this, and you and I do this. Look at the camera. Thank you. Congrats.